Facebook. We're live out here in Los Angeles, California. So let me do my formal intro. This is Musical Journeys, episode number 17 on Final Resonance TV. Today with Jay Parmar from Brighton, England.
From Anaheim today.
But from Brighton,
Yeah.
England.
Absolutely.
And he joined me here at NAMM, and we've been running around like crazy.
We have, yeah.
Doing all kinds of stuff. Let's just talk about NAMM a little bit.
Sure.
What's your impression been this weekend?
And my impression has been that this is a really comfortable chair. And it's the first time I've sat down, which is awesome. No.
Right.
NAMM's been great. It's been really busy over the last 4 days. I was playing for a couple of people. So I did that, which was...
So name who they were.
Oh, it was Iconic Guitars and Mad Hatter Guitar Products.
Right. I'm
an endorsee of Mad Hatter and Iconic Guitars. I've known Kevin Proctor, who builds the guitars for a while, and I wanted to check them out anyway. I'd planned to check them out at NAMM this year.
Right.
And so I just reached out to him and I said, "Hey, would you like me to come over and play the guitars?" And he was like, "Come on over and do it." So
awesome.
We did that, and it was just absolutely amazing. So that was great. That part of it was fantastic.
Right.
Got to jam with some really cool people while I was on the stand. Eric Dates and this 16-year-old kid, Anthony Collins. Man, that he can play. He's just an incredible old soul who can.
Isn't that amazing?
He was. You saw him play, right?
Oh, you see so many kids here that play so well.
Right.
We were at Ernie Ball yesterday, and this kid was playing bass, and he was probably under 10, and Steve Luca there comes running in out of nowhere, and he's like applauding the kid.
Wow.
It's just, it was crazy. Just the stuff that happens in NAMM,
Cool.
Just the people you run into.
Right.
And you get to hang out with your hero,
Yeah.
George Lynch, which is how Jay and I kind of met up, as we were super fans of Mr. Lynch. So that's sort of our connection. But Jay's thing is that
we're actually Uber fans.
We are. We're super Uber fans. Yeah, that's no doubt. Everybody at home knows that I'm a George Lynch fanatic. I'm one of those guys like you are. So let's talk about your YouTube situation. Let's kind of start out where you are now with that and how you got into that. And then we'll go back and catch up on your career.
Right. Well, I'm at the moment with YouTube. I'm doing something different now as of this year.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I started to do vlogs, and I decided to do that because I was actually inspired by your channel and your show, which was Musical Journeys, and I thought, hey,
thanks,
you know what? I'd like to share my musical journey with everybody rather than kind of just doing the Lynch Licks stuff, which was amazing to do. I had 4 fantastic years.
So talk about how you started that whole thing with Lynch Licks. Now, for the people who don't know Jay, he's done lessons they're like George Lynch lessons on his technique and the songs through all of his different bands and stuff.
Right.
But how did you start, and what was the inspiration to get started doing that in the first place?
Well, I wanted to get into doing YouTube stuff, and the logical step for me to take was to share my Lynch knowledge because I was so intimately aware
specialty,
of it.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
So I could have kind of gone and done, Jakey Lee or Warren DeMartini or something, but realistically, that would have meant learning that stuff.
Right.
I've learned bits and pieces over the years, but hey, my playing, it's so kind of Lynch-centric.
Right, that was your specialty. Your specialty.
Yeah. So I decided to create what was called Lynch Licks, which was initially the concept was to do small licks which people could tag together to create that Lynch solo style, which is essentially how I play.
Right.
The secret to playing any solo is you play lick number 1 and then you tag it onto lick number 2 and then that goes to lick number 3. And all I was doing was sharing the knowledge about how to do that and get that Lynch style. Right. So that was the initial thought process behind it. So I did a couple of years worth of that. And then I started to do snippets from songs, and that eventually evolved into full songs. Right. And that became really popular. I was doing full songs. Yeah, rhythm, and then one week I'd do rhythm, and then the next week I'd do the solo. And during the last 12 months, I've literally been recording full songs, and tracking them while I'm recording the videos and stuff. I don't actually play along to what I've recorded. What you guys see on Lynch Licks is what I recorded while I was recording the video. So that was a lot of fun, and I have this catalogue of like Lynch covers which are recorded. They're all recorded, and they're as accurate as I was able to get them.
Yeah. He's got a great style. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We were talking about it over this weekend, how it's outside. He plays outside the scale here and there. He has a very specific thing he does, and you've captured that whole nuance of his slide vibrato, his vibrato in general, his note choices, that whole thing. It's a very, very specific, cool thing that you and I were obviously attracted to years ago when it all started. So YouTube, you get into that, and are you part-time at that point doing something else, or are you just doing that, or?
No, I've been a full-time musician for a little over 10 years now.
Okay.
I think. Let's see, it's 2008. No, it's 2008.
Yeah.
2018 even.
Yeah.
So I switched over in 2006, so it's been 12 years.
So you're full-time then.
Right.
Okay.
So it's been almost 12 years since I've been a full-time musician. And so I made my living by teaching and then doing some production work, mixing for people. Mm-hmm. And over the last 12 months, some session work's been coming in as well. And that's been a direct result of me doing the YouTube thing. And the YouTube thing I decided to do because I was a music teacher.
Right.
And it was sharing knowledge. And,
right.
It's a responsibility, I think, to share knowledge, because then it carries on. It
Right.
It lives on.
Right.
If you don't share knowledge, it dies with us when it
right.
goes away.
And I think that's one of the big things that you and I have in common about YouTube is that, and why we both do this, like you said. It's, we've watched other people do that, like Warren Hewart. And a lot of other people. I was into Pensado's place when I first started.
Right.
All the other guys that are involved in this, the Anderton guys, all the different people that we know,
right.
Together, they all are doing what the sharing of knowledge, whether it's a pedal or it's a story of a person's journey or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's sort of a cool thing to be able to do. So let's go back, to the very beginning for you. What was it that got you into music? I mean, what was the first thing?
The first thing that really got me into music was soundtracks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Me too. Like Star Wars, and because he does this great video you got to check out. He just did a Star Wars a video, and it's all the soundtrack stuff mixed in with sort of a Lynchish.
Well, it was I called it Star Wars Scary because it's a mashup between Star Wars and Mr. Scary. So kind of like it starts off like with dun 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 dun
right.
dun 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 dun. Then it goes into Mr. Scary dun 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 dun. And all of that, and it was just this, Star Wars and Star Wars and George Lynch is two of my favorite things.
And they have a similar feel.
Yeah.
It turned out killer. I love it.
Thank you.
So so the soundtracks, huh? That's what me too. Because when I was a young kid, that's the first music that I was really kind of exposed to.
Right.
That captured because you're at a movie and you're a kid and you're like, whoa, this is it.
Right.
Connects the two of them for you. So you started out with which soundtracks?
It was the first soundtrack I remember properly listening to was War of the Worlds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Jeff
cool.
Wayne's War of the Worlds.
Cool.
Which I recently bought on vinyl again, which has been amazing to listen to. All of the sounds and things. And the thing about soundtracks was they appeal because they create ambience. If you took the sound away from a movie, the music away from the movie, then the feel just kind of
right. It just doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah,
right?
sitting in someone's house watching them wash the dishes and then take the trash out.
Have you seen the documentary Score?
Oh no, I haven't.
Oh, you need to see that.
Right.
It's a great story on what we're talking about.
Cool.
But, yeah. So go ahead.
So I started out with that, and then it was the mid-'80s, so then that morphed into Miami Vice, which was a show that my uncle got me into.
Really?
And I loved that show. So those soundtracks, Top Gun, and they were quite
Where were
rocky.
you then?
Where was I then in terms of music?
Where were you living?
Oh, I was still in the UK.
Okay.
I was I was born in the UK. I grew up in the UK, and
okay.
You know, we was.
I swear, dude, Miami Vice.
Right, I know.
So strange.
No, you know, my uncle was so into all of these shows. It was Miami Vice, Magnum
PI.
Yeah, absolutely. Starsky and Hutch.
Wow.
You know, I grew up on all of this stuff.
Crazy.
So all of the music from there, you know, and
right.
they had great music on those
shows.
Sure. So
you had to have a theme song.
Absolutely.
To catch it. You know, you knew the song, the show was coming on. You know?
Completely. And I started to buy the soundtracks for these TV shows.
Sure.
And through that, it's obviously a variety of different styles, and I just gravitated towards the rockier stuff.
Right.
So that's where it all started, and then it morphed into...
How old were you, though, then?
I must have been about 14, 15 years old.
Yeah. That's just,
something like that.
Yeah. Seems like the typical age for people, a lot of people anyway, not the really young ones like we see here,
right.
but most people.
Right.
It starts in their teens, and then by the time you're out of high school, you've kind of formed your basic
definitely
language.
Yeah.
So you go from there, and then you started playing guitar when?
I actually started playing guitar a couple of years later. I think it was 16 years old I was, and when I was about 15, a friend of mine, he was listening to a band. It was a rock band, and he said, "You have to listen to this." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it was Iron Maiden.
Oh, really?
Seventh Son.
Okay, yeah.
That album, you know. So that got me into rock music. You know, first song, Moonchild. It's like it's a rude awakening into rock music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, there's no niceties about it. It just is, bam. Straight into it.
Right. It was like when I first discovered Peace of Mind.
Right.
At first it didn't capture me, but I went back later and it was totally the thing.
Right.
Later, yeah.
That was a great album.
And maybe that's because, you know, for you and I, it's part of this soundtrack thing.
Yeah.
You know, because Maiden was a band who, their songs were stories.
Theatrical.
Exactly. Yeah, and we probably, and I think a lot of their fans connect to that thing that they do.
Absolutely.
And they're so, I don't know if they're underrated, but they're underappreciated.
Right.
For it. I'd always show my wife the videos, right? And, you know, because girls are just not always educated in Iron Maiden. and I would try to, like, you know, show her what was cool about that. I think what you're talking about, the theatric is part of that.
Yeah, because they had the stage show, they had Eddie...
The mascot.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole thing, right?
It was, whenever they toured and stuff, they had the whole stage set as well. So it was like
it went along with it, right?
Production.
Right.
And
but it was metal.
Yeah, it was metal, exactly.
Right.
You know, as soon as I heard that, I remember going out to, it was either HMV at the time or Tower Records or whatever it was, and buying Live After Death.
Yeah, the live album.
Yeah, the double live album.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal.
Did you get this? It was VHS then. Did you get the live?
No, I got the cassette tape. As
Okay.
it was at the time.
Okay.
I was listening to it on my Walkman.
Oh yeah.
And I just loved it. It was just the vibe and the
in Long Beach.
In Long Beach.
Not far from here.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're just down the road, right?
Right.
Long Beach Arena. Yeah.
Right.
Scream for me, Long Beach.
Scream for me, Long Beach. Yeah. I mean, it's
famous line, right?
It's funny how you pick up on those lines too as you listen to a live album.
Right.
You know, like I can go back to Kiss Alive Too, which was a big album for me, and I know the raps and I know the little parts.
Right. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
The interaction, which is awesome.
Crazy. So Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, I was pretty much just listening to Maiden. I went through the back catalogue, which kind of... I did this with Dokken later on as well. I started off with the live album, which has so much energy, and then I went through the back catalogue.
So you got Beast from the East, is what you're talking about, for Dokken.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a couple of years, I think a year later or something.
Okay.
But initially, it was just Maiden, and then I started to backtrack through... I obviously had Seventh Son by then, and then I'd gone back to Somewhere in Time, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, etc.
Right.
And it was interesting going back because of all the energy on the live album.
Right.
Some of the studio albums sounded, pedestrian in comparison.
Right. Because there's the lack of it's more produced.
Exactly.
It's tighter.
And you don't have the crowd noise and all of that flair. And Live After Death is probably, for me, it's one of the best live recordings ever, because it just captured this explosion of sound, and that really affected me in a positive way with music.
Right.
So I listened to them, and I picked up the guitar because I wanted to kind of play like Iron Maiden. First song I ever learned was "Children of the Damned."
Yeah, awesome
that was
song.
the first song I could play the solo to as well.
Yeah,
tapping bit and
maybe this is something too that you're talking about with the solos. And one of the things that I learned early on was "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath.
Right.
It was just something that I liked, that I could get my head around fast enough to actually enjoy it.
Right.
Without getting so bogged down that I couldn't. You know what I mean? If you're in a lesson, you're really struggling, it becomes hard. But when you do something you love, we talk about this with Steve Vai's whole thing. You do something you love, and you can really dig into it and give it the amount of effort and focus.
Yeah.
And so you find this song
that
you can play.
Absolutely, and this is the way I teach as well now. If you're doing something which you're enjoying and you really have a connection to, then you're more likely to do it.
Yeah.
If you go to a guitar teacher, if somebody comes to me and they say, "Want to learn guitar?" Okay, cool. We're going to start off with "Breaking the Chains," which is by a band called Doc, and it was done in 1983. Immediately this 16-year-old kid is like,
Goner. Doc, and who's that?
It's like, oh, there goes another student.
Right.
So I always, my thing with my lessons is I'm taking them on their journey. I'm the tour guide.
Right.
And that's how it was for me as well, because I went on my own musical journey. I discovered the bands and the songs that I wanted to play, and then I learned those.
Right.
Whether it was Dream Theater, whether it was Dokken, Rat, whichever other bands I was listening to at the time, Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
If there was something I liked, then I would want to play it. And,
right. You're probably like me. You probably learned pieces here and there, whole songs here and there.
Right.
You were just all over the place learning things.
Yeah. And from that, it just progressed into learning more and more. And I got so into wanting to play and just kept playing. It was literally just, different bands would come up. For about a year, all I wanted to do was play Iron Maiden. That was the main focus. Didn't have tab at the time. We certainly didn't have internet, which meant you put the cassette tape on. And
better or worse? I mean, is it better or worse? A lot of people say we missed if we got to the ear training that the new ones don't get.
Right.
That the young ones coming up, they don't necessarily have to put some needle on the vinyl and have to figure it out by their ears.
Right. It's a really great skill. I'd recommend it to anyone who's learning any music. Whatever you play, train your ears. If you can hear it and you can translate it to the fretboard or keyboard or drums or whatever you play, that's such an amazingly awesome skill to have. As teachers, I know for myself that if often I'll have a student say to me, "Can we learn this today?" and it'll be out of the blue, and might be something I've never heard before.
Right.
I'll put on the track on YouTube or something, and 2 minutes later I'm playing it.
Right.
And that's the ear training.
Sure. And that's what happened with me. My teacher had that skill, and I would bring in something every week, and we had 1 week of theory and 1 week of whatever.
Right.
And he would sit down, and it'd take him a minute to learn the first half, but he would learn it real quick, and I'd be watching him, and then I would learn it from him, and we would just do that. We'd do sections at a time, and then I learned the skill.
Yeah.
From sitting there watching him do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, literally listening to him. So,
yeah,
it's such an important thing. Like I said, it's one of those skills that if you need to have it. I mean, to like you said, translate between instruments.
Yeah,
it makes it so much easier if you're going to play a keyboard part. If you can.
I have to tell you a story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which happened this weekend actually. So yesterday or the day before, I don't remember which one it was. But I jammed with this girl, Chelsea Joy. Now she plays bagpipes.
Oh, I saw that picture.
And
it
was
bagpipes.
Awesome jamming with her.
Yeah.
But I found out today that bagpipes are actually tuned to B flat plus a little bit. So it's in the middle.
Oh.
Which made it really tricky to do, so my ear training was kind of like,
yeah,
this is kind of right.
Yeah, it's like playing with a stringed instrument. They're tuned differently.
Right.
You know, generally, they're tuned in different different ways. So I have a cello. I've tried to learn how to play.
Oh wow!
And it's it's like a guitar, except for the bow part, which is really difficult.
Right.
If I didn't have that, I could do it.
Initially, it just comes out.
Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, you didn't want to go there. Yeah, that's crazy. So you're through your Iron Maiden stuff, and then you get to what 20s, and what are you doing?
Well, actually, it was about a year I was listening to that stuff, and then I had a really good friend at school who used to just give me music, and his brother was a little bit older, so he used to buy records and stuff. So there was a variety of stuff coming in, like Fastway, and bands like that.
Say what you will.
And also Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah.
He got me into Yngwie Malmsteen and Vi and people like that.
Right.
So eventually I kind of really gravitated towards the guitar heroes and stuff.
Yeah,
so
shredders, as they're
right.
called today.
Absolutely. And I was listening to Malmsteen. I was really getting into Malmsteen because Vi and Malmsteen were really big at the time. With Vi, it was a little bit trickier to get into with the David Lee Roth stuff. It was awesome, but it was a little softer. It was a little more quirky and strange and stuff. With Malmsteen, it was all the speed stuff.
Right.
And as a kid, that's what you want to do.
You
just want
that.
to play fast, right?
It's like you want to get in a fast car or something. It's
exactly.
the same kind of, I don't know what it is about it.
Yeah. So I was listening to that for about a month, 2 months, and my friend kept talking to me about this band, Dokken. And he'd put one song on a compilation tape for me, and he put The Prisoner.
Oh, really?
Back for the Attack,
yeah.
Which is a great song.
Oh, yeah.
But as an opening song to a band, it was kind of like, it was
a
little bit down low.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't really...
was trudgy kind of...
different.
Down.
Right.
Great solo. He was like, yeah, this guy's good. All right, whatever. So I'd kind of almost brushed over it.
Yeah.
Then his brother bought the album Odyssey by Malmsteen.
Yeah, Malmsteen, yeah.
So he'd done me a copy of that, and on cassette tape we obviously had a little bit of space right at the end.
Right.
Instead of wasting that space on the B side, he used to put like just other random songs, whatever he could pick up.
Wow, okay, that's cool.
So I finished the whole album, Odyssey, listening to it, love it, and I'm still listening on my my headphones because I was listening on a Walkman.
Right.
And I hear this.
Kiss of Gary.
And I can feel it now. All the hairs on the back of my neck just went boom. And I listened to that song and it changed everything.
Right.
Just that exotic quality of the song and how George played with the aggression and stuff. And the initial lick, it almost sounded a little bit Indian influenced. And because of my background, my parents are Indian, as in from India. Well, their parents were from India. They moved over from Africa. So I'd grown up with that music, so it immediately kind of touched a nerve.
Right.
So when I heard George's solos after that, and he was playing the outside notes but making them sound like they were inside,
right,
that really resonated.
Right, because maybe because George had heard what you're talking about.
Right.
Your the influences from India.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he plays guitar and certain things, and obviously, I think entire the Beatles and their foray into that opened a lot of people's minds.
Right.
The Rolling Stones on Painted Black, the harmonic minor.
Yeah.
That whole feel of that. Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And so that was it. It was literally that moment in time changed everything. It was, okay, this is the guy I need to follow. This is the guy I want to follow. And like I said earlier, I went out and bought Beast from the East.
Right.
That was the first Dokken album, or it might have been a copy of Back for the Attack, or I got both of them at the same time.
Right.
But then I was listening to that, and obviously, you're finishing kind of the first half of the album, and George goes into that huge solo, which easily kind of rivaled anything Malmsteen was doing at the time.
Sure.
Then it goes into Mr. Scary.
Right. Right.
So I'm looking at this this cassette cover, which has pictures which are this big, of this guy standing on stage, no shirt, leather pants, and this Skull and Bones guitar, and soloing like that.
Right. Right.
And that's all I wanted to do, and I literally kind of spent the next 10 years just wanting to learn to play like that, and
right,
just learning as much as I could and figuring stuff out.
Man, the thing about George is like, and with all those guys, they all had their own look,
right,
their own thing, their own style. And George's Bones, we talked about the Bones guitar yesterday a lot,
right.
And it's such an iconic thing, like Eddie's Frankenstein, or even Malmsteen's Strat, even though it's just a one-color Strat,
right.
It was his thing and his look and his thing, and it was an amazing time.
There was a connection to it, right? And that's what makes it special. It was that connection to that guitar player.
Right, right.
And they all had him at the time. Vi had his Gem, and
that still resonates,
Right.
Yeah, I like the Chrome Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Satriani's Chrome
Exactly.
Boy. 30
Yeah.
years ago, this NAMM, they released it, and
Right.
and it's when you look at it, it just invokes that feeling that we had.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people don't understand that period because they weren't there or they weren't into it, and how exciting.
Yeah.
Every guitar that came out was.
The guitar was also part of their signature.
Right.
And it was really particular. Now it's kind of toned down a little bit. There may be a different paint job, or there'll be a tattoo on it or something, whatever. But the actual guitar was all part of their shtick.
Right.
You had to have.
We got to show you your guitar. You got your guitar with you.
Oh yeah.
We'll show you your guitar because he's got a guitar that's really cool that he did a lot of the work on. You did a lot of the customizing too, and all that. So we'll do that too for sure.
Awesome.
So let's just go ahead and go on just a little bit more from there.
Sure. So literally, kind of, I was after that I was at high school, finished high school, and then went to university. And I studied law, so I had a ton of time. I was living at home with my parents.
You told me you were an attorney, right?
In a previous life.
In a previous life.
Yeah, for my sins. And I've repented those sins. I paid for those sins now, so I get to be a musician now.
You're a good boy.
Yeah, I've ascended. My karma is paid. It's all square.
Well, we all had to do things, dude. I did medical sales for forever. And it's a totally different world, right?
It is, yeah.
And it's a better world we're in. Even though we have to struggle sometimes to do what we do.
Exactly.
It's well worth it. So let's talk about when you go to university and what happens then.
Sure.
At that point, are you in bands at this point, or?
No, I was literally just learning guitar and stuff, and just enjoying it. The cool thing about being at university, doing a law degree, was that I literally had about 8 hours worth of lectures and study sessions per week, or something ridiculously low. So it gave me a ton of time to actually just play guitar once I'd studied.
Yeah.
I was probably playing guitar more than I was studying. That's
of
okay.
course.
And it was at that time, which was about 1991, Wicked Sensation had been released.
Yeah.
And with Wicked Sensation there was the tab book, so that became my aim to be able to play that whole album.
Wow, that's a tough one, man.
So did that. I learned it from a book, and then the REH video came out.
I had that patches on the front.
Yeah,
That's his guitar.
That's right. And the thing was, at the time, I was actually playing with my first 3 fingers. You know, I was kind of doing that. You know, whatever I was playing was first finger, second finger, third finger, and predominantly doing this and adding in my pinky wherever.
Right.
So I see REH, and George is using his pinky all the time and doing all this trilly stuff.
Right.
So I'd been playing for about 2 years at that time, and I decided, well, I've got to change my fingering now.
Right. Because of the he does that thing with his first and fourth.
Right, absolutely. And it was kind of it was the aesthetic thing and wanting to play with the pick held backwards and all of that, and just went into crazy detail about how to kind of play like George and
right
stuff, and just kept watching his hands. So I think that was something that helped me a great deal when I watched REH. I wasn't necessarily watching the licks that he was doing. I wanted to learn them.
Right.
But I was also watching his hands. How did he play stuff?
Right.
How did he pick stuff? You know, which fingers did he use? And all of that combination creates the sound.
Sure. That that was funny. I thought about that a while back. Was that before MTV, before REH videos? Those videos. Mm-hmm. You didn't see it. You couldn't see it. You couldn't watch it. Mm-hmm. The only way you could see it is to go to the concert and get close enough to go, oh, he's playing it in that position.
And that was difficult because they played arenas at the time, right? So you'd probably be in the nosebleed somewhere.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? You think about Van Halen's "Ain't Talking About Love."
Right.
You know, everybody plays it in the open position, or right. Give me that. I'll show you.
Sure. Cool.
So when I learned it from a guy. Mm-hmm. Normally it's like, right? But watch this. Like that.
Oh, wow.
That's how I learned it.
Wow.
So that just shows you. We couldn't see it. We could only hear it.
You could only, you did it in a way which was actually
because it was so staccato. It was staccato sounding too, like that, because you were the way I was moving that. So we never could figure that out. We had to do it all by ear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So REH is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a huge deal for those videos to start coming out, and so I spent a couple of years actually learning all of that stuff and learning to play the intro track and some of the solos and things like that. Yeah. And that started to kind of cement my knowledge of how to play George Lynch stuff. And then the Dokken records, Back to the Attack, I learned by ear.
Yeah.
Under Lock and Key, went back and learned various songs from that. Right. Tooth and Nail and also Breaking the Chains.
So when did you get in like production and all that?
Production was much later. Well, I'd say much later, but my first recording experience was earlier on. It was in about 1994 ish. The first song that I tackled recording was Mr. Scary.
Wow. Way to go, Jay. Jesus.
Yeah,
So you sat down and recorded it yourself?
Why start simple?
Did you start at home, or?
Actually, it was for a university project. So while I was studying law in my final year, one of my modules was entertainment law, because that's what I wanted to get into because of the music connection.
Yeah, sure.
Now, my major project, my dissertation was on whether a sound and style could be subject to copyright. So, if a guitar player has a certain sound or a style, should it be subject to copyright?
That's an interesting concept.
And, I studied it in fine detail, and I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to do this, then maybe I should try and record, because I like to play it, George, and I think I've got some of these nuances down. So, so I wrote probably one of my first songs, which was called I called it Sacred Groove, or something like that. Wonder where I got that name.
Yeah, whenever you got that
from. And then also decided to do Mr. Scary, and so I hired the equipment. So it was a Fostex R8 reel-to-reel, and this huge SEC 32 channel desk. And I remember I had to leave my passport at the place and give them money because I was hiring the gear, and had to take it to my house, hook it all up, figure out how it all worked. And initially I'd plugged it in wrong, so it wasn't kind of recording, and I spent like 3 hours figuring all of that out, and then it eventually worked. And I was up all night because I only had it for 24 hours. I was up all night doing the drum programming. Hired a drum machine as well, which was this big thing like this.
Right. You were cramming.
Yeah, seriously, man. I did the drum programming for Scary on there first.
Oh God.
Recorded it to 2 tracks. Yeah. Then I layered up all of the guitars. Did the rhythm guitars first. Then all the lead parts for Scary, and just I remember it was like I was up all night. My sister had stayed up to help me, and she kind of fell asleep at some point. And then we took the stuff back in a taxi cab to the place, and that was my first production experience. Right. So I had to mix it that evening as well, mix it down onto cassette tape. So I had that. I actually went back into the studio a couple of weeks later and remixed it because I wanted to make some tweaks to it. So the recording process started there, but then it kind of I didn't have anything else to record on.
Right.
So
because everything back then, you until 4 tracks came out, and they were
right
$500 or something, and they're really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the production stuff started up for me a few years later, actually, because I got a computer and Cubase. I think it was VST 32 or 24, whatever it was at the time.
Wow.
And I started experimenting with recording to that.
Right.
And that was around after 96 or something like that.
Right, when you first started with DAWs.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was fun to do. I kind of figured it all out, just trial and error, and then, mixers and mixer, so you kind of do stuff, and the EQ, etc., and learnt about panning and whatever else. And
right, a little bit at a time.
Yeah, a little bit at a time. The first couple of recordings were junk, but then you kind of learn from it. I learned a lot from actually mixing on that huge mixing desk that first time.
Right.
Because initially everything is in the center, and just the basic act of panning guitars out
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Created the space in the middle, and then the bass and the drum pattern can come through better, and then so I had that kind of a little bit of knowledge,
experience right there. Yeah,
And
then over time, it's like everything we do. And I think this is such an important thing that we're talking about, is that everything is just these little baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of learning little bit at a time, and that's what Jay and I are trying to do, is trying to provide people with those little, information that we've learned building up over decades of playing around with a mixing desk for the first time, or software, or cameras, or whatever we have to do.
It's like building up a collection. Often people kind of wonder why they don't have a guitar collection.
Yeah,
it's because they sell guitars in order to buy other ones.
Right.
It's with knowledge. Often, if you trade your knowledge for the next piece of knowledge, then you're constantly at like the same point, just with something different.
Right.
Whereas if you accumulate knowledge over time and you add to it, then you have this enormous cache of knowledge at the end of it. Right. And that's a really important thing. I guess that's a skill that we've taken away from this, that actually everything that we learn, we retain that knowledge. If it's useful to us, then we retain it.
Sure.
So that it becomes part of our overall knowledge.
Yeah.
And we use that knowledge as well, so that,
and pass it on too.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, one of the things about the YouTube thing that's so interesting to me is we come to NAMM, and there are literally, I don't know, dozens of people who are in this with us, doing this kind of thing, and it's growing.
Yeah.
And so the YouTube thing, you start, you get this idea to get involved with the Lynch thing.
Right.
tell me about the YouTube world and some of the stuff that you've experienced with the other people that you've interfaced with. I mean, a lot of them we interfaced with this weekend,
right?
And had a chance to meet. And there's some great ones. So just like some people that you really admire
on YouTube. Guys like Rob Chapman, Rabir Masad. Rabir's like one of my favorite guitar players.
I like Rabir a lot too. He's great.
I love Rob's personality and stuff. I know both of them, so you know, personally. So
we talked about Robert
cool.
Baker.
Robert Baker as well.
Really cool.
Who's here. He's a great guitar player and just a great personality.
Warren Hewitt, we both like.
He's amazing. Warren's like just a fountain of knowledge for production stuff.
He is.
The other guy I watch for production is Graham Cochran.
Graham Cochran, okay. Yeah. Graham's great too. And Warren, I think what Warren did the first time I ever saw Warren, I was really surprised by, was he actually gave me the secrets. I mean, instead of kind of dancing around the secrets, he actually showed you on the board what he was doing, when he was recording something.
And he always wishes you a marvelous day.
He does always wish you a marvelous day, which we love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I interfaced with him here at NAMM, and he was so cool that he was like, I had seen him. He was over at the Billy Sheehan thing,
right?
And I talked to him for a second, and then he said, "Send me an email or something," and I sent him an email and. I saw him yesterday checking in.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, Jeff, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes,
fantastic.
He goes, I got your email. I just hadn't a chance to get back with you. But, I get to do this because I remember people's names. So, Warren's a great mentor in the way that he goes about handling his...
Right.
I mean, he's got a very busy channel.
Yeah.
But he does some great work.
Yeah. And it's, I think back in the day, it was all about keeping the secrets because everyone was trying to compete with each other.
Right.
One-upmanship and stuff.
Right.
Whereas it's counterproductive in the long run. I mean, everybody can find their way eventually.
Sure.
But then that's kind of trial by fire for everybody. But, if we can pass on the knowledge which is actually going to be helpful, then that's really inspiring for people because it helps them. We're actually helping them in a way in terms of like... creating an easier path for them.
So talk about your videos, the inspiration videos, and how this comes to you. How you decide to take Lynch Licks,
right?
And you're kind of, I guess you're probably not totally ever going to go back to doing anything Lynch, but you're definitely going to go in a new direction, and your direction is this inspiration videos and your vlogs. Let's talk about those a little bit and why you decided to do that.
Inspiration, I decided to do because I've wanted to for a long time. Inspiration is a huge part of my life, which is why I smile all the time.
You do smile all the time. You exude a positiveness.
Right.
And we were talking. I forgot who was talking about that the other day. But I've run across a few different people in my travels that have preached that.
Right.
That it's that's such an important thing, and I see it with you. And every picture you post, everything you do. So how do you do that?
Well.
And you know what? I watched one of your videos where you said it wasn't always like that for you.
Right. Most of the time it is. And I do it now because I lived most of my life not being positive. And then when I learned to be positive, which was a direct result of my wife, Bindi, because she got me onto this track of positive thinking, a holistic lifestyle, meditation, yoga, and you're dealing with my demons from like my childhood and stuff that had happened with various events and people when I was young, which made such an impact, which basically left me being a very, very shy person, somebody with very, very little self-confidence, somebody who didn't know how to actually make it in life. To then turn the corner eventually and actually feel happy. And also understanding that the more I feel happy, the happier I will feel anyway, because whatever we feel, we're going to attract more of it to us.
Right, we talked about this.
Right.
About the law of attraction.
Yeah.
And how you attract the things that you, I don't know, how would you say that?
Well, whatever is your deepest feeling, and whatever your thought process is, it puts out an energy.
Right.
we can take it as a basic example of if you're really upset or angry.
Right.
Yeah. Then your face is going to look a certain way.
Right.
Yeah. If I came up to you and said, "Hey Jeff, what's going on, man?" My intention might be kind of,
yeah,
I really like you, man.
Yeah.
You're going to be kind of looking at me like, is this guy going to kind of punch me or something? Is he gonna piss me or something? What's going on? So, when you actually exude the positivity as well, when people can feel it and see it,
right,
then it inspires them as well.
Right, and they kind of give it back.
Yeah, and it's something
even if they don't really realize they're doing it.
Absolutely,
right.
Because it's all a loop, right?
Right, right.
Whatever we're putting out, it's coming back to us, not necessarily from the people that we're interacting with, but at some stage from somewhere. A really good example is I met up with somebody who had contacted me. He lives in the U.S. now. He's English, and he lives in the U.S. with his wife. And he wanted to meet me because he was coming down to Anaheim to see Extreme play, and so we had lunch together.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. Sat, had lunch, talked. It was like just meeting old friends.
Yeah.
Just like it's been with us, actually.
Right.
It felt very natural.
Right.
So anyways, I left. I needed to get back to play and stuff, so I left after lunch and stuff. And while I was walking down, I was like, shoot, didn't get a photo. So I very quickly went back, and Eamon and Louise were still there. And hey, Eamon and Louise, if you guys are watching this, I so loved hanging out with you guys. And I went back, and Louise was there, and she said, we were just saying just how natural it felt to actually be with you, and just it just felt so good.
Yeah.
And that always makes me happy, because often you don't get that feedback from people.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because I felt that way, but when we met, I mean, we had interacted online for a while, but you exude a certain thing through your videos,
right?
That I know you've run across this when you meet somebody in this business that you never physically met, but you either see or interact with, and you get a vibe about them,
right? And
most of the time, it's right on,
right? Absolutely.
And I felt that way about you. I knew we would just, because we have so much in common.
Absolutely.
That we would be right on the same track.
It's interesting about the commonalities as well, because commonalities in interest, they don't necessarily make for good friendships.
Yes.
It just means that you're interested in
the same thing. Right.
What needs to also exist, I feel, is that deeper connection, that understanding of who each other is, and how they are or why they are.
Yeah.
I've experienced people who are extremely negative and still into the same stuff as we're into.
Sure.
But eventually I've found that we part our ways, because I'm always focusing on that path of ascension, of more joy, and passing it on to people.
Right.
Whereas when people are in a negative space, they're exuding that energy, and unless they start changing that,
right,
at some stage, that's going to keep coming back to them.
Right.
Now, they can only hang on for so long.
Right.
And then they just fall off.
Right.
And just naturally, relationships part ways. So I think it's really important to actually have that deep connection as well. And it's part of inspiration as well. It's not excluding anybody on purpose. It's just the universe basically showing them that actually this isn't the path for you, or it's not the right time for you to actually follow.
Right, I agree with you. There's a lot of stuff that we discussed about when Steve Vai's teachings.
Right.
Here's a guitar player who we both grew up with.
Right.
Who had his own demons, and he admits that, and also, he's very open about some. I don't know if you've watched some of those videos where he talked about his depression and stuff. But when I've been with him, much of what we're talking about, he endorses. it's like a practicing thing. You practice this.
Yes.
You know, you actually work on these relationships and your positivity and what you
got to make it part of your lifestyle.
Right.
It has to be an everyday thing.
It changes. It does change your world.
Yes.
Because you start to the positivity starts to surround you.
Definitely.
That never was there.
One piece of advice I would give to anybody is, when you start on this path, don't take it personally if negative things, or what we perceive as negative things, keep happening. The reason is because if you imagine, I'm 44 years old now, right?
Right.
For a lot of that time, I was putting out a certain energy.
Sure.
Now, that's not going to... It might not all come back to me.
Right. It's not like it's,
exactly.
You don't just order it.
Exactly, right. So now I'm on this positive path. And then, karma is a cycle. Basically, whatever we've put out previously comes back to us eventually, right?
Right.
So, if something, while I'm being positive, if something challenging happens, and I always call it challenging now.
Right.
I always keep in mind that this is a result of past actions, not my current actions. Now, then that gives me a choice how I act now.
Right.
Do I go back into that space of putting out a challenging thought process and feeling, or do I recognize that this challenge is from something in the past, work through it,
right,
still keep my center, and then once it has passed, start being positive, or be positive through it,
right,
even though it's challenging. Feel the feelings, but not get attached to it,
right,
and still then get back onto the path of positivity, so that you're not just putting it straight out there again, which means in another week, bam, it's going to come back around, and it's going to be another cycle,
another challenging situation, right?
Life sucks because it keeps kicking me in the butt. But it's not. It's basically you kicking yourself in the butt.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing that people, they eventually seem like they learn for the most part.
Right.
So I got a few last questions for you.
Sure.
State of the music business, how do you feel about it? I mean, do you feel like we're just, it's always changing, right?
Right.
And in our situation, I think this is another evolution.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's just evolved. Record sales are down, but there are other ways to make money in music. Once you make it a business, then you've got to think about it as in, all right, what are my skill sets? So my skill sets personally, I'm a guitar player, I'm a guitar teacher, I'm working on YouTube, have just over 6,000 subs. Thank you all.
Yeah, 6,000 subs, this guy. Incredible.
So, that happened just before NAMM.
That's right.
Wow. And just doing things like vlogging, and the point of my vlogs was to actually show people how a real musician lives. So they're going to go on a journey with me over the next 12 months. So they're seeing what NAMM is like now, and what I've been doing, and who I've been interacting with, how I've been playing.
Right.
When I build my guitars, I'm going to be doing that. So I build guitars as well, do session work, and do production work for people, mixing and stuff. So it's diversifying and having your fingers in different pies.
And that's a really cool thing about what we do.
Right.
Is that there are so many avenues.
Yeah.
That you can go down. I don't ever feel like I could be ever bored.
No.
Some jobs they are what they are,
mm-hmm.
and you do this and you do that, and that's it.
Absolutely.
With music, you could do a zillion different disciplines.
Completely.
Recording, live sound. An artist as an artist, you could play any of the instruments.
mm-hmm.
You could learn anything. You could do promotion. You could be a lawyer.
Right.
You could do so many things. That's one of the things that keeps me coming back to it. I just never get bored with it.
Right. Absolutely.
So, advice to young musicians.
Stay positive. Yeah. Set an intention, and we met your friend Brandon Falls.
Yeah, Brandon Falls.
Days ago. He was a really good example of this. And Brandon, if you watch this, thank you for that example.
Yeah, man.
It was setting an intention and believing with every fiber of your being that you can get there. So even if the challenges come, working through them, and when the opportunities present themselves, then if it feels like the right opportunity, then take it. That's something I didn't do when I was younger.
Yeah,
I didn't take opportunities even though they presented themselves, and hey, I eventually got to do it, but it was about like 20 years later.
Well, that's the same thing happened to me. I mean, exactly, and one of the reasons why Brandon Fall was even with us was because a long time ago I didn't take an opportunity that was right there. And when that same opportunity came available for Brandon, I was just part of the cycle to help him do it a little bit, and I'm so glad he did it.
Yeah,
because he could have just not done it, but he did do it, and here he is out in California.
Beautiful thing is he had the confidence and just the intention,
right?
The need to actually follow through with it, which was amazing to see.
Right. So the future for you, you're going to be doing your inspiration videos, and
I am. Yeah, I've actually another reason I did the vlogs was so that I could integrate everything that I do into one.
Okay.
Because inspiration was a separate series, and it was kind of a little bit fragmented from what I usually did with Lynch Lakes.
Right.
And then showing the guitars and stuff like that.
Right.
So now, because I do a vlog, it's my life.
Right.
And I can do things like say, hey guys, you know what? It's first thing in the morning, I'm meditating.
Or you're drinking coffee.
Yeah, or I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah, right.
Or I'm doing something else, and it's about my life. So I'm bringing in the inspirational elements as a result of it, and I know that, but just by example of what we do as people,
right,
that inspires other people,
right,
and so the inspiration is built into it.
Which is exactly why we do these shows.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And we're glad to be here for anyone who wants to listen to us.
Completely, yeah.
Totally. Well, this is Jay Parmar, all the way from UK, and I'm so glad I had a chance to hang out with you this year at NAMM. It's amazing what the internet can do. And,
it is.
And what we want, a guitar, a guy named George Lynch, and a beautiful NAMM convention.
It's been such a great time, hasn't it?
It's been fantastic. I'm glad we finished it up together. Thank you, man, for being here. And hopefully I'll see you next year here.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm almost here every year. So
be round 2. Ting!
Yeah, so maybe we'll do another interview next year. This is Jay Parmar.
It's Jeff Goebel.
Episode 17 of Musical Journeys. We'll see you next time.